A mass grave was recently found in north-central Mexico with at least 18 bodies. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov claimed that all countries with an independent policy are currently under attack by the United States. Hundreds of demonstrators gathered in Mali's capital on Friday in support of the government junta, the national army, and the military cooperation with Russia. Hi, this is From the South. I'm your news anchor, Dio Martin, from the TeleSUR studios in Havana. We begin with the news. A mass grave has recently been found in northern Mexico with at least 18 bodies. The discovery is part of the efforts made by the collective Warrior Mothers of Leon, from where they have confirmed the existence of the grave. Preliminary information links the crime to the New Generation Jalisco cartel. The remains were found in the community of Hacienda Arriba, an area belonging to the municipality of Lagos de Moreno in Jalisco. The collective of mothers informed that the State Commission, the Attorney General's office, and the municipal unit participated in the search. The mothers have called on citizens who have missing relatives to take a DNA test to rule out the possibility that they are related to the victims. The collective also assures that they do not rule out more findings in the area. Argentina's monthly inflation rate surged to the highest level in decades, triggered by the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. As Latin America's third largest economy, Argentina's monthly inflation rate is around the same level as the United States and Western countries are witnessing in a year. The rate increase comes after the country's statistics agency earlier on Thursday released data showing consumer prices rose 6% in April, bringing it to the highest annual level since 1992. Argentinians are counting the cost of the highest inflation in decades. According to the latest official figures in Argentina, inflation in the following months will decelerate gradually from its peak in March. Social movements brought Buenos Aires to a standstill on Thursday. Thousands of protesters demanded a shift in social and economic policy as rampant inflation hits lower-income families the hardest. Lula, with 44% of voter intention, continues to lead polls for elections in Brazil. Regarding the presidential runoff, the survey indicates that Lula would win with 54% and Bolsonaro would reach 35% of the votes. Now, former President Luis Inácio Lula da Silva continues to lead the voter intention in Brazil for next October's elections, according to the result of a new survey by the Institute of Social, Political and Economic Research, known as IPESP. With an error margin of 3.2%, the survey shows that the support for the leader of the Workers' Party gives him a chance of winning in the first round. According to the survey, Lula showed the same percentage of voter intention as in the one published 2 weeks ago, while his main opponent, Bolsonaro, increased to 1%. Regarding the possible outcome of the presidential runoff, the poll indicates that Lula would win with 54%, while Bolsonaro would attain 35%, an increase of 1 percentage point over the previous poll for the latter. On Friday evening, the Cuban people bid farewell to the victims of the tragic accident at the Saratoga Hotel. In Havana, a representation of the people of the capital and the highest government authorities arrived at the Fraternity Park in solidarity with the families of those who died as a result of the explosion. Lisandra Andres tells us about it.
1 week after the explosion at the Saratoga Hotel, solemnity and tribute marked the vigil for those who died in the accident. In front of the building, the faces of the 46 fatal victims of the blast that brought mourning to all of Cuba.
Very tough days, days of reassurance, days of unity, days of much compassion, days in which the people came, asked questions, supported. This was not only the firefighters, not the Red Cross, not the builders, it was the people of Cuba.
Many gathered at the Fraternity Park. Some are crying, others are waiting in line to say goodbye. Others are dressed in uniform. Almost everyone has a story to tell about the hard days lived after May 6 in Havana.
From the first day, the rescuers themselves said that the first responders were the young people, the people who passed by this place. From that first moment, many were the people who helped to save the first lives, and later a mass of young specialists in these rescue tasks arrived at the place.
These days of work were very hard. because besides the works of lifting the debris and so on, it was very hard, even though we knew what we were looking for. It was very hard to find a lifeless person under the rubble.
Shortly after 9 p.m., Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel Bermúdez and other members of the government arrived. There are flowers, candles, and grief. Silence takes over the space. It is time for shared mourning, for accompanying loved ones who grieve for their dead.
We put a lot of effort in its conservation, in every corner of the hotel, in its remodeling, in maintaining its condition, always tall, upright, but the hardest thing is the human lives, the workers.
There was no lack of spontaneous tribute from people either. Those who come to the park for the first time since May 6 are shocked by the disaster. Children, mothers, fathers, siblings, grandparents, family, friends, or acquaintances shared the pain.
First, we were here as rescuers, pulling out the people, all those who were under the rubble. And now we're here as Cubans, as human beings, accompanying the families and friends of all the deceased or victims.
Many claim that the whole island is crying, that on this day all Cubans open their hearts to let the light in.
Lisandra Andrés, TeleSUR, La Habana, Cuba.
Cuba's parliament debates economic and social strategies to face a post-pandemic stage. The discussions are taking place at the Palace of Conventions in Havana during the 5th extraordinary session of the National Assembly of People's Power. The Summit of the Americas, scheduled to take place from June 8th to 10th in Los Angeles, was part of the meeting's agenda, and the deputies described the unjustifiable exclusion of Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela from that continental gathering as a new act of aggression by the United States. A declaration rejecting the systematic campaign of lies and disinformation about Cuba promoted by Washington was adopted by the parliamentarians, who also condemned the economic, commercial, and financial blockade of more than 60 years imposed by the United States on the Caribbean nation. More on the Caribbean, a medical congress in Puerto Rico revealed that the island has suffered the exodus of half of its doctors in the last 13 years. The Vice Minister of Health, Felix Rodriguez Schmidt, revealed during the 4th Health Congress of the United Center of Retailers that more than 8,000 doctors opted to go abroad over a period of 13 years in search of better professional opportunities and living conditions. The Vice Minister said that today only 9,492 doctors remain in the country out of the 18,754 that existed in 2009. Rodriguez Schmidt pointed out that in July 2023, they expect to open new residencies in order to prepare specialists in general medicine, with the hope that they will remain on the island. We're going to take a short break now. Please join us again after this. Hi, and welcome back to From the South. Thousands of activists take to the streets in the United States on Saturday to demand access to safe and legal abortion. The protests come in response to a draft final ruling leaked to the media showing that the conservative majority U.S. Supreme Court is considering to overturn the landmark Roe v. Wade decision, which guaranteed legal access to abortion nationwide in 1973. Demonstrations have been announced in New York City, Chicago, Washington, Los Angeles, and Austin, among other major cities, in addition to hundreds of small mobilizations across the country. Democratic governors have pushed through measures to codify abortion rights into federal law, an action seen by Republicans as an attempt to weaken them electorally. The United States government acknowledged that the problem of milk formula shortages in the country will not be solved in the short term. Brian Deese, the top economic advisor to the White House, explained this Friday that the scarcity of infant formulas worsened after months of shortages in pharmacies and supermarkets due to the fact that the transnational company Abbott, one of the main producers, had to withdraw a significant proportion of its stock following the death of 2 babies who suffered bacterial infections after feeding them. The insufficient supply available was raised prices and caused tensions in families, as many U.S. mothers returned to work almost immediately after giving birth and depend on formulas to feed their infants. The federal government stated that it is working with the remaining manufacturers on a plan to increase production. Pope Francis announced that he will visit Canada in July to offer a public apology for decades of violence against Indigenous people in Catholic boarding school. The Vatican press office explained that the Pope will visit Ottawa after accepting invitations from civil and ecclesiastical authorities as well as from Indigenous communities in order to ask for forgiveness for the violence against Native peoples brought upon by the Catholic Church. The office pointed out that the leader of the Holy See plans to visit the cities of Edmonton, Iqaluit, and Quebec, where he will hold individual and public meetings and visit orphanages. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov claimed today that all countries capable of pursuing an independent policy are currently under attack by the United States. The senior official stated at the 30th meeting of the Russian Foreign and Defense Policy Council that those who do not agree will be punished, that not only Russia will be punished, though even more because Russians are offering resistance. All those who are capable of pursuing an independent policy are attacked. The head of Moscow's diplomacy warned about the so-called Indo-Pacific strategy of the United States, which is focused against China and by means of which Washington intends to include India in a solid and reliable way in the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and make it a part of its partners. He pointed out that likewise in the spirit of the Monroe Doctrine, the White House wants to determine the rules according to which Latin America should live. The Russian foreign minister noted that Western countries are no longer perceived as an ideal of freedom and democracy, and with their predatory actions have eroded their reputation as a reliable partner.
Dissident countries will be punished by the United States. It's clear that it's not just about Russia. We fight back. We fight back, however. But everybody able to carry out an independent policy is under attack. For instance, the Indo-Pacific strategy promoted by Washington. It has a direct anti-Chinese orientation and aims to include firmly and reliably India in the U.S. NATO bloc. The U.S. wants to dictate standards of living to Latin America in line with the Monroe Doctrine. The question is whether Americans are able to follow the key principles of the UN Charter saying United Nations should rely on the sovereign equality of the states.
On Saturday, Russian armed forces delivered 50 tons of humanitarian aid to residents of the Kharkiv region of Ukraine. The Russian Defense Ministry reported that the humanitarian supplies included fuel and medicines as well as food and basic goods, which were distributed in the different localities of the region. First of all, the necessary assistance is provided to families with children. These actions are aimed at providing support to civilians who have been inevitably affected by the conflict between Moscow and Kiev in the Donbass region. On February 24th, Russian President Vladimir Putin announced the launch of a special military operation in Ukraine intended exclusively at the demilitarization and denazification of the self-proclaimed People's Republics of Donetsk and Luhansk, previously recognized by Moscow as sovereign states. The authorities of South Ossetia called for a referendum on the accession to Russia on July 17th. Outgoing president of South Ossetia, Anatoly Bibitov, signed a decree on holding this referendum. The decision was made in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution, he said. The move responds to the historical aspiration of the people of the Republic of South Ossetia to rejoin Russia. In his words, in the referendum, the population of the Caucasian nation will have to answer the question, do you support the unification of South Ossetia with Russia? The call also comes as the candidate for the presidency of South Ossetia and the leader of the Nikas party, Alan Gegloyev, was elected president by heading the vote count with 56.09% of votes. North Korean authorities ordered a nationwide lockdown in response to the spread of the COVID-19 after reporting more than 20 deaths and almost 175,000 new infections in the last 24 hours. According to information from the North Korean official agency, since the end of April, a total of 524,440 cases of coronavirus have been registered. The latest report on Friday reported 174,000 or so new cases and 21 deaths linked to the virus. The situation, according to the North Korean President Kim Jong-un, is causing great disturbances in the country. The official highlighted the confinement and isolation of the most affected areas as a priority for his government in order to face the spread of the disease, which is why he decided to declare nationwide confinement. The North Korean leader also assured that his government will follow China's example in dealing with the pandemic with severe border restrictions, confinements, and mass testings. South Africa is experiencing a surge of new COVID-19 cases as well, driven by two Omicron subvariants, according to health experts. The new increase in COVID cases is coming as the country enters the southern hemisphere's colder winter months, along with the rise of cases of flu. South Africa's new infections have gone from an average of 300 per day in early April to about 8,000 daily this week. South Africa's new surge is from two variations of Omicron, BA4 and BA5, which appear to be very much like the original strain of Omicron that was first identified in the country and Botswana late last year and swept around the globe. The new versions appear to be able to infect people who have immunity from earlier COVID infections and vaccinations, but they cause generally mild symptoms.
We have not really seen a peak, but normal, so we could really be at the beginning of a wave. And if we look at the earlier waves, we saw that the increase was quite smooth at the beginning. So I think we could be seeing that. But again, we need to look at what the numbers are telling us. And so just the number of positive cases doesn't really tell us much, because how the people that come for testing changes with time. People got tired of COVID, so now I think a lot of people do not go for testing. So just the number of positive cases, we need to take them with a pinch of salt.
We have more news coming up after a final short break. Please stay with us. Hi and welcome back. Hundreds of demonstrators gathered in Mali's capital on Friday in support of the government junta, the National Army, and the military cooperation with Russia. The demonstration was held in the city of Bamako Independence Square and also denounced the West African sanctions against the nation, the presence of the military forces of the United Nations Organization's mission MINUSMA, and the rejection of France, which militarily occupied the country until January this year. After January's demonstrations requesting Russia for support, the European occupation forces announced their withdrawal, while the Russian forces, in line with the legitimate cooperation between states, have become increasingly present.
This march is to send MINUSMA packing. We don't want MINUSMA anymore. We don't trust MINUSMA. We don't want our country to be put under Chapter 7, which means put under trusteeship. How can we want to put our country under trusteeship when its army is able to recover its territorial integrity? Today we have come to say goodbye to MINUSMA.
We're showing ECOWAS that we have chosen these soldiers for the transition. The duration is not even our problem. All we want is for this country to stabilize, for this country to find dignity.
Hundreds of Muslims poured into the streets of the northwestern Nigerian city of Sokoto in protest over the arrest of two students following the murder of a Christian student accused of blasphemy. Muslim youths took to the streets of the city, lighting bonfires and demanding the release of the two detained suspects, despite the earlier deployment of policemen to maintain order. Deborah Samuel, a student of Shehu Shagari College of Education, was stoned to death on Thursday, and her body was burnt by a mob of Muslim students of the college after she posted something on social media they deemed insulted Prophet Muhammad. Nigeria is roughly divided between Muslims and Christians, but religious tensions and deadly clashes are not uncommon, particularly in the north. The United Nations Children's Fund and UNICEF reports that 18.5 million children are currently out of school in Nigeria, a figure that has risen since 2001. The head of UNICEF office in the Nigerian city of Kano, Rahama Farah, said that numerous attacks on schools by criminal gangs in the north have created a precarious learning environment that has discouraged parents and guardians from sending their children to schools. Since the terrorist group Boko Haram abducted 200 girls in the northeastern town of Chibok in 2014, dozens of schools have been targeted for similar mass abductions. According to UNICEF, last year about 1,500 students were kidnapped by gunmen. While most of the young hostages have since then been released for some ransom, some still remain in captivity by the armed groups. Sri Lankan lawyers gathered outside President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's office in Colombo to protest against the country's dire economic and political crisis and to demand his resignation. Sri Lanka announced a default on its $51 billion foreign debt Tuesday as the island nation grapples with its worst economic crisis in memory and with escalating protests demanding the government's resignation. Acute food and fuel shortages, as well as long daily electricity blackouts, have brought widespread suffering to the country's 22 million inhabitants in its most painful downturn since independence in 1948. And we've come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at TeleSUR English. You can also join us on social media for all the latest news. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Dio Martin. Thank you for watching.